All right. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending the Hawk December 2022 presentation. Got a fun one coming up here tonight. We had a little bit of a challenge getting the audio files loaded for a couple of back calls that's in this presentation a little further on. So you can download them from the chat right now. We'll figure out how to get those into the recording. So if you're watching this on a recording, you may or may not be hearing it, but nonetheless. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys coming out. I am trying to advance my slides, and there we go. So Hawk, we're a nonprofit organization here in Matthews, North Carolina. I know a lot of you are members of Hawk and other North Carolina Wildlife Federation chapters. So not only welcome to our presentation tonight, but also congratulations on doing all the good things that you guys do for our other chapters and volunteering and whatnot. You know, one of the things that we started a group in Squirrel Lake Park here in Matthews, and we've got folks attending. Rather folks arriving. So sorry for the noise that we've got behind us here. But you know, the wonderful thing about Squirrel Lake Park is where we got our group started, and all of these plants have grown tremendously since this picture is taken. But we always could use volunteers there, as well as the other chapters, I'm sure. You know, the big push that we have is to stitch all of our backyards and our properties together. And an easy way to do that is by getting your yard certified through the National Wildlife Federation. Fairly easy. You know, food, water, shelter, place to raise young is what all wildlife, and we're included, what we need. But the last piece of it is being very sensitive and using sustainable gardening practices. You know, anything that ends with a side, pesticides, herbicide, fungicides, those kind of things, avoid them at all costs, because we need all those little things too. So volunteers, I had mentioned that just a moment ago. You know, we've got our Kids in Nature Day that comes up in October, and then we have our Earth Day and Kids in Nature Day in April. But we're always looking for volunteers to help us with a variety of different tasks. So if any of these little things are just baking cookies and bringing them to our meetings, once we start getting these in live presentations rolling again, when we have enough people here, gnawing on some cookies and that kind of thing would be very nice. You know, one of the volunteer things that's coming up, North Carolina voted to go ahead and do actually, I apologize, I thought I had that on a slide. It's an all trails day is what they're calling it. The event that Matthews, as well as all around North Carolina, are doing is they announced that 2023 is the year of the trail. So they're the first state to declare 2023 as the year of the trail, and it's the largest celebration of outdoor recreation in North Carolina. So First Day Outdoors is one of the events that will be featured during the year of the trail in Matthews. What we've got planned is guided hikes and walks at 4 different locations on January 1st. So if you plan on partying for New Year's Eve a little too hard, not to worry. There's a 10 a.m., 12 p.m., and a 2 p.m. So all you heavy drinkers, the 2 p.m. one might be for you. But the locations in Matthews are going to be the Matthews Sportsplex, Purser Halsey Park, 4 Mile Creek Greenway, which starts over at Squirrel Lake Park, and the Matthews Heritage Trail, which starts behind Town Hall. So there'll be information tables at each location with maps, trail information, and trail etiquette information to share. And each hike will be about a mile. The hike at Purser Halsey is a little bit longer, but one of the things that will be coming out here real shortly is a sign up genius if you want to volunteer to help lead a hike or at the info table or something like that. So one of the things that you see at the bottom of this slide is the greattrailsnc.com. You can find more information over there and sign up and be able to see all over North Carolina the things for starting year of the trails for 2023. It's kind of a neat little event that they just started. So we've got our Earth Day event coming up April the 15th. We're going to have a invasive plant cleanup over there at Squirrel Lake Park coming up about a week or so before that. So if you're willing to pull a little bit of kudzu, a little bit of English ivy and wisteria, we'd love to have you come help us out. Maybe just spread a little mulch with us. You know, this time of year, everybody's bagging all their leaves. So Xerxes has a whole bunch of great slides. I stole one of them to talk about leaving the leaves. So red-banded hair streaks, as well as so many other Lepidoptera, not only overwinter as in their cocoons in leaf litter, but they also lay their eggs on leaves that then fall and overwinter in the leaf layer. So go ahead and just pile up all your leaves, be a lazy gardener, don't bag up all your leaves, and you'll have all sorts of fun stuff growing there. Luna moths are another one that overwinter in the leaf layer. And if you're not familiar with Luna moths, but they are as big as my palm. So fabulous when a kid finds a Luna moth for the first time. So you don't get them if you throw away all of next year's Luna moths in bags of leaves. So hang on to your leaves, teach your neighbors as well. We always want to thank our sponsors, Birdhouse on the Greenway, as well as Williams Subaru, and all the help that they've helped us go ahead and get this organization sponsored. If you missed last month's presentation on solitary bees by Dave Hunter, you can find it on our YouTube channel. We had a little technical difficulty where we didn't hit record. That's why I mentioned that I needed to hit record earlier today. But Dave's portion is all recorded. If you look for Hawk NCWF on YouTube or this little bit.ly link, bit.ly's links are case sensitive. So Hawk is capitalized, bees is all lowercase. So bit.ly/Hawk bees will get you to that YouTube presentation by Dave. Tonight, we've got a special guest, Monica Calhoun, and very much looking forward to hear her talk all about bats in North Carolina. One of the neat things about that is that she's done quite a bit of research, not only here in North Carolina, but elsewhere. She'll talk about that. She's a second-year biology grad student at University of North Carolina at Greensboro. She has her undergrad degree from Mars Hill University in biology with a minor pre-med and concentration in biomedical. Always had a love in animals of all shapes and sizes, especially the odd ones. And I'd say that bats certainly fill that gap, right? She's a part of the big wetland restoration project, and she was put in charge of the bat detectors. She designed her own master's thesis around bats and wetlands. So I'm very much looking forward to not only hearing her talk about the bats that we have, but also her research that she's done. I imagine not all of it is fully analyzed yet. So hopefully you'll be able to share some of that, Monica. I'm going to go ahead and share, or rather you can share your screen and you can hop on here and take it away. We're looking forward to hearing all about it. I do see that you're muted though.
Hi, everyone.
All right. We can hear you.
Are you hearing me okay? Okay. And everybody can see the slide?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Like he was telling you, my name is Monica Calhoun. So I'm going to present to you today all about bats. I am a second year master's student at UNCG. And I have not analyzed all my data, but we'll talk more about that in the presentation later. But let's get started. Okay, so all about bats. So bats are the only flying mammal. A lot of people think flying squirrels are also flying mammals, but they are not. They glide, they do not fly. So that's an interesting little fact. There are over 1,400 species of bat worldwide. This does include extinct species that this count includes the extinct species that have happened. So there's a little bit less in the world now. I think it's about 1,200 species now. So 200 of these species have gone extinct. And a lot of them are the megabats. So the sizes of bats vary impressively. So you can see on the screen right here, this lady holding what is the largest megabat, and it's called the golden crowned flying fox. It can get about 6 feet long and weigh about 2.6 pounds. It is a fruit eating bat compared to the smallest bat in the world, and also the smallest mammal lengthwise in the world, the kitty hawk-nosed bat. And you can see the size comparison between the same species of animal. So they're just, the sizes of bats are very impressive. And the difference that bats have adapted to based on their size is impressive to me as well. So some bats can fly over 100 miles per hour. A lot of bats usually fly around 60 miles per hour, but some of the smaller ones can get pretty fast and fly at 100 miles per hour. So I think that's really fast, especially up in the air flying around. Also, bats use echolocation to find their food source. So echolocation is a type of call that these bats use. Some of the bats, not all of the bats, use in order to find their food, to find their way through trees and obstacles. And echolocation is a way that they send out these high kilohertz volumes that we cannot hear with the human ear, and it bounces off stuff and sends responses back to the bats. It's very similar to what whales and dolphins do as well, if you've heard of echolocation that way. 1 out of every 5 mammals is actually a bat, so that tells you right there how many species and how many bats are in the world. Okay, so the bat life cycle. So they're interesting because the bat babies are also called pups, and they are born to the mother. And most bat species usually have 1 pup per year, per season. Some have 2, very rare do they have 3. And this is because that it takes so much energy and effort for these bats to raise this one young, that they usually keep it down to 1 or 2 bats per litter. So pups spend their time together in a nursery while their mothers are hunting. So these bat mothers will get together and like put their babies all together. So they're like in a little nursery, and some of the bats will stay around and watch them while others go out hunting, and then they switch off, which I think is really fascinating that other animals do this, not just humans. While the mother bat is flying and they're changing roost and finding new homes, the pups will cling to their mother. And the pup cannot fly until it's about 2 to 3 months old. So it's very important that it learns how to cling. And they have knees and stuff that help them cling to their mother and be able to fly like they do. So like I was saying, bats live a long time. They can live up to 30 or 40 years, which is one of the reasons that they have 1 pup per year, because their life is so long that they can reproduce. So unlike mice, where they can reproduce multiple times a year, all the time, rapidly, bats take a lot more energy and production to produce 1 baby and make sure it survives. But when that baby does survive, it can live up to a very long time. And I'll talk more about that, because that can have things to do with diseases and other issues that humans interact with bats. So bats are mammals, and they possess the three main characteristics that all mammals do, which are mammary glands, hair or fur, most of them have fur, and three inner ear bones. And like I was saying before, bats have knees that are completely backwards compared to other mammals, as well as hind legs that go outward to allow for rotation of the hind limbs. And this gives bats the ability to hang upside down by their toes and also cling to their mothers. So this is why we see bats a lot of times hanging upside down. People always ask, why do they hang upside down? Why don't they just sit upright? It's for several reasons. One of this is because of the way their toes are made and their knees are made. And another reason is because when they're hibernating, when a lot of bats hibernate, when they expel their poop and pee, it doesn't get all over them. Since they're hanging upside down, it goes opposite. It doesn't get all over the other bats that are hibernating with them. So some information on bat diets. Insectivores, so one bat can eat up to 12,000 insects per night, or 4.3 million a year, and this is for a single bat. So you can see how bats are very important to the ecosystem. They eat things such as flies, moths, mosquitoes, and spiders. I really enjoy the fact that they eat mosquitoes because I am not a mosquito loving person. I know they're important for us, but they're also very annoying. So bats take care of this problem a lot for us. 70% of all bats are insectivores. So this plays another big role in their pest control and their role in life in the world too. Another type of bat is the frugivores. So they eat only fruit, and these are usually the bigger bats that I was talking about. So that first picture that you saw where the bat was almost 6 feet long, they are frugivores, and most megabats, which are the really big bats, are frugivores because they get a lot more nutrients and a lot more sugar from these plants and vegetables. So some things they eat are figs, mangoes, dates, and bananas. So another type of bat is the vampire bat. And this is where they get their bad rep because everybody's like, oh my gosh, these bats are going to come suck my blood. They're going to come bite me. They want my blood. This is a very untrue statement. Only 3 species out of those 1,400 that I was telling you about are actually vampire bats. And they don't even consume human blood. They usually consume the blood of cattle or livestock, and it's usually nocturnal things. So they don't even want our blood. They don't like our blood. So bats have a very bad stigma because of Hollywood and the media, but only 3 species in the world of bats are actually vampire bats. The last type of bats are carnivore bats, and these eat fish, birds, mice, lizards, frogs, and other bats. So you can see this little guy hanging. He has grabbed himself a little frog and is chomping on him for his dinner. So you can see there's a whole range of bats out there, and they have all different kinds of diets. Okay. Let me move you guys. So this is a map of where bats are found. So they're found on every continent except for Antarctica. And these 5 bats up here, I'm really bad at saying their names, so forgive me. So the Rhinopodea, the Pteropodea, the Embalanurodea, Noctilanodea, and Vespertilionodea are all different kinds of bats. So this guy, you can see his colors, and I'm going to go into more detail. He is a horseshoe bat, and there's about 106 species of him located in the world. The Pteropodea is the megabat, or the old world fruit bats. There's about 170 species of these. The Embalanurodea are the microbats, or the sac-winged bats, and they're also known as sheath-tailed bats because of the way they look. There's about 47 species of these guys left. You can see kind of their locations. The Noctilanodea are the bulldog bat fishing bats. So These are the guys that go and eat the fish and stay around water a lot of times. There are only 2 known species of these guys left, so a lot of them have gone extinct. And then the Vespertilinidae have over 400 species, so you can see their range is a lot longer. And then the rest are either extinct or not mapped out properly, and it's really hard to map all the bat species in the world because there are so many. Okay, so this just breaks it down. I broke it down for you guys a little bit more detail so you can see each one of these and their range better compared to the last slide where they were all bunched together. So you can definitely see the Vespertilinidae has a very wide range, where some of the other ones are very isolated and found on only certain continents. Okay, so why do you care? What's the importance of bats? Like I said, bats get a bad rap and they're not known as the best animals out there, but they are very important creatures in the world, and this is a little bit about that. So bats are important to the ecosystems in several ways, including pollination, arthropod suppression, which is pest control, and seed dispersal. So they are estimated to save farmers billions of dollars in pest control each year by not only eating millions of insects, but by also saving the farmers from having to buy pesticides to take care of the pests the bats eat. So people think of bats and they don't really think of money-saving animals, but they are. So all of our food, all of our vegetables that we get that get farmed, bats are around these areas, and they're saving all of this money. They're saving countries billions of dollars a year by managing these pest controls, and they're just really great for the ecosystem in general. Also, going back before, so bats can eat more than 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. And this is one bat can eat this much. So that's a lot of bats, or that's a lot of bugs. So if you think about one bat eating almost 1,000 mosquitoes, that takes care of a huge problem. So we need to really protect and appreciate these guys for what they do for us. Because if not, we would be overtaken by mosquitoes without a doubt. So some fruits that depend on bats. There are over 500 plant species that rely fully on bats to pollinate their flowers. So bananas, agave, what is this one called? This is the weird fruit that I never remember the name for. I think it smells really bad though, but bats pollinate this one. Mangoes, of course, and then avocados are a big one. So the biggest destruction for bats right now is known as pseudogemonocycus destructans. Again, I'm really bad with names, I'm sorry. It's also known as white nose syndrome, or PS or PD. So you'll hear me say it by either white nose syndrome or PD. So white nose syndrome is a disease caused by the fungus PD that affects hibernating bats, and it was first detected in the United States in 2006, and it has now spread to over 38 states since then, causing deaths of millions of bats in some cases. And then some of the mortality rates of bat colonies exceed 90%. And this is really sad because this was a human-caused problem. So someone from Europe, white nose syndrome was originated from Europe, we believe. We're not really sure, but it has been over in Europe and other countries for a long time. So those bats have learned to adapt and adjust to it. But then someone went caving and took the equipment in there, picked up this fungus called PD, and then went caving in the United States, bringing that fungus along with them. So they probably didn't know any better. They didn't think about it. They didn't clean their equipment properly. But something as simple as properly cleaning equipment between countries and stuff has caused a huge decimation in a species. So in 2006, someone came over here and went caving, and it was first discovered where you can see this little X mark up here in New York, I believe. And it just spread like wildfire. And you can see the first confirmed cases were in 2006, and we're still finding cases to this year. start popping up. So Montana's getting a lot of new cases. Wyoming's getting a lot of new cases. So it's still spreading, and it's been almost 20 years. Not quite 20 years, but almost 20 years, and it's still decimating bat populations. And if you remember, like I said before, bats only have one baby a year. So if you wipe out a whole colony of bats, that wipes out the future generations to create these colonies coming in, which affects our insect abundance and affects our human lives and affects our crops and our livestock. It affects a lot of things. So white nose syndrome has really been a problem, and it's still a really big problem in bat species. There is no known cure for white nose syndrome. So what they're doing for the bats right now is properly cleaning equipment is one. A lot of people are going to caves and blocking them off where bat colonies are known to hibernate over winter. They will actually block these caves off completely to humans, so these humans cannot come in there and spread white nose syndrome even more. Because bats are a flying mammal, is already easily spread between the species and the colonies because they roost together. So this is just a really big problem for bats, and we're just trying to help any way we can, but it is still a big problem. You can't really stop a flying animal from spreading disease. The disease did spread to North Carolina in 2011. That's when it was first discovered here. So you can see that it took 5 years to go from New York all the way down to North Carolina. But that was the first known case of this disease in North Carolina. So it might have been there before. We just started noticing it more. This is just a bigger version of that map. I just want you guys to get a better look at it and how the years differ between this map. Okay, so bats do have a bad rep. Like I said, Hollywood has linked them to sucking blood, Dracula, vampires are bad, but they do spread diseases, so they do have a bad stigma. So there are a few reasons for this. Bats are reservoir hosts because they live so long. These viruses have longer to mutate and to replicate and to spread. So the biggest one that everybody is worried about always is rabies, which is a fatal viral infection that can be transmitted by bites, scratches, and mucous membranes, exposure from an infected animal. So everybody thinks rabies, they're like, oh my gosh, a bat bit them. They got it from a bat automatically, but this is not the case. Less than 1% of all bats carry rabies, and bat bites are very rare in general. If it does happen, it's probably because this bat got trapped in a house or an area and they got scared and they flew, and animals bite to defend themselves. And then you had to go and get checked out. Not all bats carry rabies. Like I said, less than 1% of them carry, but if you are exposed to a bat or you do get bit by a bat, they automatically give you rabies shots because of the bad stigma that they carry. So more than 200 viruses have been associated with bats, and almost all of these are RNA viruses. And this is because RNA viruses have a higher mutation rates compared with DNA viruses, as the viral RNA polymerases lack proofreading activity. So this allows them to replicate and to spread faster. Some other big name ones are Ebola, Marburg virus, severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is a SARS. So this is a big one right now because everybody's like, bats cause COVID, bats cause COVID. It's not the COVID that we're thinking of. This is the COVID back in 2002 that happened and spread rapidly. But the COVID infection that we are dealing with now is not linked to bats at all. They've actually tried to, there's been some studies done where they've tried to inject bats with COVID-19, and the bats will not uptake the virus, or the virus will not survive. They're not reservoir hosts for the virus. So COVID-19 actually does not like living in bats at all. So this is a very bad stigma for bats right now because of our epidemic going around, but they did have the one that started in 2002. Some other big ones are the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome and Nipah virus and Hendra virus. Hibernating bats can also spread diseases easily because when they go and hibernate, they hibernate in thousands, by the thousands usually, and this lets all the viruses mutate and spread between each bat. This is why white nose syndrome is such a problem as well, because the fungus, when the bats are hibernating, can just move from bat to bat to bat when they're all in close proximity to each other. Okay, so some more about bats in North Carolina. We have 17 bat species found in North Carolina. All 17 of our bat species are insectivorous bats. 4 of the species of North Carolina bats are federally endangered. 2 species are at risk. 3 species are of concern. And then you can see in this graph right here, in 2010, number of hibernating bats that were in North Carolina. 2011 white nose syndrome was found in North Carolina, and you can see the drastic decline in the 2-year span that they were recording white nose syndrome over the years. And even until 2018, it just kept dropping. So there was a 98% decrease in our bat populations of North Carolina with the hibernating bats that we have here. So these are our 17 bat species. I know they're all very cute. They're all very different looking. And so the ones that I wanted to point out were the ones that are federally listed as endangered and are now protected under the Endangerment Act. So the northern long-eared bat is actually one of the newest additions, and it came about in actually November 29th. I got an announcement that it was added to the Federally Endangered Act. It will not go into full effect for another 60 days, so they're still doing research on that. But he was just added to it. He was on the federally at risk list before, but because of white nose syndrome, 80% of his population has been wiped out. And white nose syndrome has spread to over 80% of its range in North Carolina and almost all of its range in the US. So he is now officially on the endangered list, which is really sad, but hopefully this bat can get more help now. Some other ones are the Indiana bat, the gray bat, and where's my other one? And one more. 1, 2, 3. My stars got messed up. But yeah, you can see which ones are endangered. The 1-star ones are the federally listed at risk bats. So there are 3 of these guys as well. And then the other ones are doing okay. White nose syndrome does affect most bat species, but there are a few stronger ones. So like the big brown bat is seeming to persist and not be as affected by white nose syndrome as unlike the northern long-eared bat that we've seen. Also, the evening bat is doing pretty good, and the hoary bat. Because of white nose syndrome, you would think that most of these bat species would be wiped out, but they have, I don't know if they have something in their genes or development, and there's still research going on with that, but they are more resistant to white nose syndrome than these other bat species that it's just like decimating. Okay, so I'm going to start going into a little bit about my research now. So a lot of people ask me why bats and why wetlands. So wetlands are actually one of the most valuable biologically productive ecosystems. And the more bats equals the less insects equals the less vector-borne diseases. So like I was telling you before, bats can eat up to 1,000 mosquitoes alone in a night for one bat. So without bats, mosquito populations would surge. We'd spend billions more on agricultural pest control and probably have a lot more pesticide use in our food. And then many plants, like I was saying before, including the ones that used to make tequila, would lose their primary pollinators because bats are big pollinators to a lot of species. Studies have shown that $1 billion per year, bats save $1 billion per year in crop damage alone. That's not including the pesticides that I was talking about before. And plants, fruits, and agave are really important. Bats are really important for these plants, so especially agave. So if we have no bats, we'd have no agave, which means no tequila, which means no fun for anyone. And some more about wetlands. They provide housing, food, sociality, and safe spaces for bats to forage throughout the year, especially in the warmer months. So when bats come out of that hibernation, they're looking for a place to go forage and find food. And wetlands are expected to have this source of food income for them. So why is my study important? There are no current studies or studies before this that investigate whether bats use wetlands primarily as foraging habitats more often than other habitats. So it has been assumed wetlands are very important breeding grounds for insects. So people have assumed that bats use these wetlands or they're found near wetlands because they're foraging, but there has been no actual evidence of this. So I wanted to prove this or try to prove this in my research. And this is likely because the insects that bats forage on depend on water as part of their life cycle, making riparian and wetland habitats potentially important foraging ground for the bats. So wetlands provide an important habitat for many endangered species of wildlife. In 1991, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services had a list of 595 plants and animal species that were threatened or endangered. 256 of the 595 fully rely on wetlands alone. This number has probably changed. There has not been a lot of research done with wetlands because a lot of the wetlands 200 years ago were seen as nasty breeding grounds for mosquitoes, useless. So in 1991, we had to go and protect our wetlands because we started getting rid of all of them, not thinking about the consequences it would have on the ecosystem. So wetlands are so hard to defend and protect in part because they are hard to define, and thus a classification system is a major area of research and debate of importance. So you can walk out your back door and be like, oh, this is a wetland, there's a pond back here, but you have to be able to prove this to the government in order to get protection over that land. And it's really hard to define it, it's really hard to protect it. Everybody's definitions are different of wetlands. So this causes a problem in order to protect these lands, which are important to many species, like I said before. So some of my preliminary data, this is a little video of bats flying around over one of my sites that I took one night while doing my research. So what I found with my preliminary data is bats have been found to concentrate most of their flight activity around or near wetlands. Wetlands are a valuable aquatic resource as they provide drinking, roosting, and potential foraging habitats in close proximity to forest edges. And then, like I said before, many insects that the bats rely on and forage on depend on water as part of their life cycles. So this would make the wetland habitats an important foraging ground for the bats potentially. And this is what I wanted to prove in my research. So I had 10 sites in total that I went and observed this past summer. I went to each site 3 times and took acoustic detectors out there and recorded bat calls for 3.5 hours each night from 9 o'clock to 12:30. So you can see I focus my research in the Piedmont region of North Carolina because there is I based some of my research off of the UNCG research that's done because we have new wetlands that are 5 years old on our campus. So I based it off of that, and I wanted to add more range to it. So there's a good variety and range in the Piedmont area. But again, wetlands are really hard to find and get permission from the owners to go see. So there is some gaps in here. And not all these places have wetlands as well, because 200 years ago, we decided to turn them into agricultural land, or we built houses on a lot of these wetlands, and we like covered them up and got rid of them. So these are my 10 sites. So I'm not going to name all 10 sites. If anybody's interested in them, I can absolutely share them, but they were all found in the Piedmont region. Here are some pictures of my field sites. So even in my pictures, you can see the variety of wetlands. And these were all open wetlands that I went to and did my research at. And even with the definitions of open wetlands, they're all very different looking from each other. And these were very similar defined sites. And you can just see the difference in all of them. And I also not only studied the open wetlands, but I also studied the forest edges next to these open wetlands. So I had to find sites that had both open wetlands and forest edges right next to it. So the 7 bat species present in the Piedmont region of North Carolina are these guys. So we have 17 in North Carolina in total, but the 7 bat species that my audio recordings picked up and that other people I picked up in the Piedmont are represented here by these pictures. So we have the silver-haired bat, which is uncommon, the hoary bat, which is common, eastern red, which is a common one, the tricolored bat, which is an at-risk bat, Mexican free-tailed bat, which is a common bat, evening bat, which is common, and big brown bat. So most of our bats are common, except for the one tricolored bat at risk. So some of my methods, like I said, I used audio recordings, acoustic monitoring, and fieldwork was conducted at 10 wetland sites around the Piedmont region of North Carolina from June to September of 2022, this past summer. Each field site was visited 3 times and randomly determined. Weather conditions were optimal for bat activity at all sites. So this meant that bats don't like flying in colder weather. There was no rain, the winds were under 10 miles per hour, and the temperatures were all above 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And this followed recommendations based off of other studies of bats done already. So the main thing was not to go out in the rain, and I got rained out a lot in the summer because summer, there's a lot of rain. But for bats, if they fly out in the rain, their wings get a lot heavier and it causes them a lot more energy to expend in order to forage. So they usually just don't even go out during this bad weather because it takes so much more energy, where they could just save the energy and go out the next night or when it stops raining. So what I used were song meters, SM4 BAT FS ultrasonic recorders with a unidirectional microphone attached to record the bat calls over the open wetlands versus the forested edges. I had 3 detectors in total at each site, and I visited each site on a different night. So these detectors were all easily removable, and I just set them up every night and took them down every night and moved them from site to site. Each recorder was set to start recording at 9 p.m. and stop recording at 12:30. And this is just a visual representation of how I had my sites set up. So the detector 1, I had it pointing towards the open wetland, picking up bat calls only found over the open wetland. Detector 2 was pointed towards the forested edges, picking up calls only coming from that area. And then I had a control detector, which was an omnidirectional detector that was set in the middle of the detectors, picking up bat calls from everywhere around them. So some of you might be asking, why acoustic monitoring? And why not just capture these bats so you know exactly what bat species is present? So acoustic monitoring is important because it's a non-invasive way to study bats compared to other methods such as mist netting, which is how you capture bats. Another also bad reason to be capturing bats right now is because of the white nose syndrome going on. It's a lot more effort to clean the equipment. It's a lot more stress on the animal to handle it, to interrupt its foraging patterns. So I just wanted to use acoustic monitoring as a non-invasive way so the bats could still go about their lives freely. Also, acoustic monitoring is a lot easier to set up and take down by yourself than mist netting. You would need a lot more help and a lot more people. So bats produce species-specific calls, making acoustic sampling an excellent way of answering questions related to patterns in bat activity. And my question was focused on, are bats using wetlands as foraging grounds versus just flying over search phase location calls? So that's why I chose acoustic monitoring and why it's important to use. So I use this program called Kaleidoscope Pro. It automatically identifies the bat calls for me. So this is some data pre-analyzed that Kaleidoscope Pro automatically puts in. The good thing about Kaleidoscope Pro is it auto identifies bat calls for you. So this is Kaleidoscope Pro's number of the auto identification of the bat calls. So you can see my 7 species listed here. The interesting thing is the tricolored bat was the at-risk species that I was telling you about, but you can see there are a lot more calls picked up, the number of bat calls picked up than, like, say, the hoary bat or the silver-haired bat, which the hoary bat is a common bat species. The silver-haired bat, we expect to see low numbers because it's uncommon around here. But it just it amazes me that I got so many calls from an at-risk species in the Piedmont area in North Carolina. So that's something that I plan to look into more as well. So analyzing bat calls, this is the part I am still working on for my master's thesis. So when the audio detector picks it up, I use Kaleidoscope Pro and it spits out an image like this based off the bat call. So I have to go through all of my bat calls manually and look and see, are they foraging calls or are they just search phase location calls? So you can see here, this is called the approach phase, and this is for a big brown bat call. And you can see he's evenly calling. And then as he gets closer to finding food, his echolocation starts bouncing off this the prey that he has found, and it starts getting a lot more rapid so he can pinpoint the prey. And then once he captures it or misses it, either way, you don't really know if he caught his food or didn't. He starts going back into the search phase echolocation calls, which are more evenly spaced and steady. And I'm gonna show y'all an example. So this example is one reason why acoustic monitoring can be good and also bad at the same time, because you can clearly see in the screenshot that I took here, this is a bat species right here. You can see its calls are all pretty similar, and then in the background you can see much higher animal calling, which I know is another bat species just based on the looks of this. And so the problem with Kaleidoscope and acoustic data is it doesn't know how to separate these bat calls into 2 different species. So I can see visually that there are 2 bats calling at the same time, but Kaleidoscope Pro is only going to pick up the loudest and the amount of calls that this bat is making. So it didn't even pick up this bat in the background. So you can see there's multiple bats calling throughout this whole 11-second cycle, but Kaleidoscope Pro will only probably call this like a big brown bat because it's picking up these louder calls. But I want to show y'all an example where I can go in and manually listen to them and see them and notice. And this is where we're having a lot of problems. So if you want to stop and play it on your screen, you're welcome to do that. I don't know how we want to go about that.
Go ahead and hit play. Let's see if it actually works for us now. It wasn't working for us earlier.
Okay, you want me to hit play?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, we're not hearing it. All
Okay.
right, well, so that was one of the reasons that we uploaded. If you got into the chat or you logged into the presentation after we had already shared it on the chat, we've got those 2 WAV files uploaded there, so you can download them and hear them. Monica, while I have you, while I'm kind of butting in over here, there are apps that folks can download to their own phones that you can go ahead and it will give you, if you go outside and you're able to go ahead and record, and it'll give you a little bit as providing your phone's microphone is sensitive enough.
Like to record a bat outside, like with your phone?
Like an echo. Right, like an echo meter. I understand that there's a special microphone that you can buy to plug into phones.
Yes.
And
I actually
but
want one. Like, I don't even have one, but I would love to have one to be able to walk outside. Like I can pick up on bats flying very easily now, and sometimes bats also like chirp and make these little noises where we can hear them. Those are just fun little chirps they make. They don't have any like meaning on how they're flying and stuff. They kind of sound like birds, so I like pick up on it really fast now that I've done a lot of research. But there is not kaleidoscope, Wildlife Acoustics does have these detectors that you can actually just plug into your phone, and you can walk outside and detect bats right then and there, and it will tell you what species of bat it believes it's detecting and the accuracy of what it believes that bat species is, which is really cool. Like, technology has come a very long way with bats. I do not currently have one. They are about $350 to $500, I think, depending on which version you get. So they are kind of pricey for the general public. They also just discontinued it on an iPhone because iPhone would not cooperate and provide the adapter anymore for it. So it is only available now on non-iPhone phones, which is sad because I have an iPhone. But you can take like a regular tablet out or a Samsung out and use these things as well. But yeah, it is discontinued on the iPhone, which is half the population of the world. So it kind of cuts out some use of it. I think they are working on something else currently, but where they're at with that, I do not know. And if anybody has questions about it, I can definitely put the website on it as well, because they are a great source for audio acoustics. But okay, so moving on. This is another example of a bat call. So you can see in this example that there's only one bat calling, and I just wanted to show y'all some different examples of what it can look like. So the lighter green back here is a quieter bat call happening, and then the white and the pink is a louder bat call. So that could be that the bat is flying closer to the microphone picking up these bat calls. It's just calling louder. But this isn't a good example to show you guys. And if you are able to listen to it, it is very easy to hear on your own. You can see, even though it's light green right here, this bat will start calling very fast and frequently. And this is because it is approaching a source of food that it won't, and it either got it or it lost it, and then it goes back to calling again. So it's really cool to listen to this bat call and hear them actually finding food and locating food. I do want to mention, I forgot to mention, with these calls, you cannot hear this with your human ear outside. These are all slowed down to 1/8 of the speed that they would normally be at. So this is happening. You can look down here. This is happening in like a 5-second time span, and you can see how many times these bats are calling. So when you're listening to these, they're slowed down to 1/8 of the speed that they're actually calling at. Okay. So these are some just pictures of bats, because some people may still have biased opinions of bats, so I always bring out these really cute pictures of bats all around the world. And I think they're just all unique and beautiful. They're also known as sky puppies to a lot of people. I may be a little biased because I like the odd ones, but I mean, some of these you just can't argue with being cute, especially the big cheek guy up here, little babies, and the one just giving you a little cute smile up here. Some of you may be asking, what can you do to help bats? You're getting interested in bats now. You want to help these guys out because you realize how important they are. So there are a few things you can do. You can join the North Carolina Bat Working Group, which is pretty much a volunteer-based group. We just had our annual meeting last week, and I actually just joined it. I didn't know a lot about it, but it's just a very small group, and it's called the NC Bat Working Group, or NCBWG. You can just Google it and learn way more about it. There's no sign up fee or anything. It's free. You can join the mailing list. A lot of the things that they do are volunteer based. So you can volunteer. If you join them, you can volunteer to help with surveys and stuff. I know they're planning to do a few surveys to go out and actually put up these big metal fences to block people off from caving, since white nose syndrome is still such a problem in North Carolina. And it would even be like these caves on private property or on that had signs clearly posting, please do not disturb, do not go in here. And there's people everywhere that will still go in there and disrupt the nature and just be like lollygagging around. So we're going to go in and help these bats a little bit more and try to help the spread of white nose syndrome more by putting up these big metal gates that are human proof. So we're human proofing things for these guys. Building bat houses when and where appropriate. So bat houses, you can Google when is it appropriate to build a bat house. I'm not very well versed on this. I wish I was, but BCI Bat Conservation International has a good source on this. So a lot of people are like, well, I can just build a bat house or buy one on Amazon and put it on my house or put it on the tree in my backyard. This is not the case. You have to do it in a very specialized way, or the bats are not going to use the bat houses properly, and it's not even going to attract bats, which is very sad. So if you want to have bats in your backyard, if you don't like mosquitoes and you want to add it, go get yourself a bat house, but make sure you're doing it properly. So most of them, the biggest problem is they have to be 30 feet up in the air, because that's where bats like to be when they're roosting. They're high off the ground. They're safer that way. They have to be away from trees in order to be able to use these boxes properly and be able to get heated properly. Another good way is to donate to your bat organizations. And there's several bat organizations all over the world. Wherever you live, there's a few in North Carolina. The North Carolina Bat Working Group is all takes donations as well and stuff. Another big one people don't think about is keep your cats indoors. This is a problem for many species, not just bats, but cats love flying things, especially birds and bats. So they are a very big problem, and they do cause destruction to bat populations and also bird populations. And also, like we were talking about at the very beginning, don't use pesticides. Pesticides is bad for all parts of life. Yes, they're important in some ways, but if you want bats to be attracted, you want bats to keep coming around, don't use pesticides if possible, because they are a natural pesticide. You won't have to use these pesticides if you get bats around, because they'll start eating all your pests that you use pesticides for. If you want to know more on white nose syndrome, I can share this link with someone. There's a very good video. It's about 36 minutes long that talks about the impacts of white nose syndrome in North Carolina, especially, and they did an incredible video. So I can send this link out as well. But other than that, do I have any questions? And thank you for your attention and time.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of applause. I don't know if you can hear it over here.
I can't, but thank you.
All right. So, very much appreciate you sharing all stuck. There it is. My mute button was stuck for a moment. Donna was asking about the sign that is on the on that pole with the bat house. If
Mhm.
you had any trying to zoom in on it, it's a little too far to be able to see it clearly here, but
So
is
this
that-
is probably, I just got this image off of Google. This is probably just a bat house put up in a national park or something, letting people know what it is. To stay away. Bat guano can spread diseases easily too. So if you go up and look in it and, you know, bats can be pooping, that's a big problem with bats and humans too, is their droppings, of course, get on a lot of things. So it's probably just a sign alerting them to what this is, what it's for, how it's good for the area that it's in, and giving a little bit of information would be my guess. You do not have to have the sign on your bat house, especially if it's in your yard. There are no requirements on it that I know of. So I hope that answered your question, but yeah, this is probably just because of where it's located, this particular picture.
well, if you happen to find that, by all means, please send that back out. We might be able to pick up who those logos at the bottom are.
Absolutely.
And see those. You know, we get a lot of questions from folks of putting a bat box. Where can I put them? And you know, unfortunately, you know, when you build habitat, it doesn't mean that they'll get occupied. You know, they don't see that free rent sign, which is certainly problematic in all sorts of different kind of habitat. You know, from owl boxes, bat boxes, that kind of thing. So do you have any tips on, you mentioned that they need to be about 30 feet up in the air. Do you have any other tips on where they need to be situated at all?
Yes, so a big thing with bat houses is the color as well. And this can all be found on BCI's website. I know in North Carolina with our weather, because I've been looking at putting one around my house, a dark brown like this color is a good color, but they can vary anywhere from black to red to dark brown, I believe, depending on how hot it gets in your area, which we're in North Carolina, so they recommend like a dark brownish color. If you have a barn or anything like that, if you live out in the country, you can put them directly like up against your siding. They like that because it keeps them warm. And a lot of bats actually like barns because of the area and how barns are built. So a lot of people have had success putting bat houses on the side of their barns because then the bats go into the bat house instead of the barn. But if you have problems with bats in your house or your attic or your other areas, you have to fix that problem first. Or they're just going to keep going back to where they know it's safe and where they're comfortable at. So there's more than just putting a bat house up to get rid of bats. The North Carolina Bat Working Group has a lot more experts who have done this way longer than I have. And I learned a lot about it at the meeting I was at a week ago, a lot more about it. So you can always reach out to them on their email and ask them too, if you're interested in putting up a bat box anywhere. They have way better tips and hints than I do, because they've been doing this so much longer and they know how to get rid of bats and how to help bats and do all that. So
We got another question over here from one of our folks here. So she'll ask you a question directly.
I've been to Mammoth Caves where they had you step through all the stuff and were very, very careful. When I was at Carlsbad Cavern this year and they had just had 400,000 bats fly out of the cave the night before, I asked them, where's the stepping mats and stuff? And they said, oh, we don't have a problem here. Now, are they just not being careful, or is there certain caves that don't get white nose syndrome?
So they probably have tested for white nose syndrome year after year, and it might not just be a problem there. That doesn't mean it won't become a problem. I mean, a bat might decide to join that cave. Like, there can be several things that can cause this. They should, I believe they should have it, but I'm not a white nose syndrome expert. Because it's decimating. It also might be the type of bats that were coming out of that cave. If there are certain species of bats that are more resistant to it, and that's the only bat found there, it might not be a problem, but until I know the specifics, it I don't know. I can't answer that question any better. So they probably should have some kind of thing, or at least signs on the cave, you would think, but it might not be a problem. White nose syndrome might not be persisting there. It can be all kinds of little things that might be a reason for them not to do it. And I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, that is encouraging though, that we do have certain bats that are considerably more resistant to white nose. So hopefully I'll be finding a little respite, a little antidote soon from some researchers, that's for sure.
I hope so, because it is, it has decimated them.
We got another question over here. I'll have Shem come on up here and ask questions.
Thanks again for your talk. Great talk. I just had a general question. What are your plans when you're done with your masters this summer?
As
Far
of
ahead.
late, I am looking for jobs currently. I would love to keep working with bats or any mammals in general. I have applied to a PhD program. I don't know if I want to go that route. I'm just seeing where life takes me, but I think my plan right now is to try to go and be a wildlife biologist somewhere, or to work with animal conservation. I really love field work, so that is my hope.
Awesome. That's a great answer. I know there's a lot of jobs in consulting too with bat work too.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Yes, my first question.
we got another question. You're not going to be able to hear it from where she is, but yeah.
Yes, my first question is, if you do have bats, like if someone's out of care or killing them, it is against the law to kill them, right?
So one of the questions as far as bat removals from an attic in North Carolina is it's assumed here that it's illegal to remove bats and kill them on your own. Are you familiar with any of the rules as far as like from a pest management standpoint when you have bats in your attic or on your property?
Yes, so there's a lot of good resources out there that if you do have problems with this, they will come and remove the bats for you. I know during maternity time, like when they are having pups and they are trying to get them to grow, it is highly illegal to even remove that bat from that area. And that's pest control and everybody. They just have to keep them there while they're roosting. And I don't know if this is for all bat species, because the ones that this is because of white nose syndrome, because a lot of places it's important for us to get our bat numbers back up because of white nose syndrome. So I know if the bats are in a maternity roost or using that house for a maternity roost, it is illegal to remove that bat. I think it is about hibernating time and stuff like that. So they will probably be able to come out and remove bats like that, but it just depends on the time of year, the situation, and who you contact. But yes, you cannot remove them yourself legally.
Yeah, and I would imagine,
And it's
unless you identify what bat you're dealing with, once you start dealing with any sort of endangered and protected creature, then you get into all sorts of other regulatory and highly illegal acts. So what was there was another question too.
Question is, this was in Ohio and I was young, I was out in the field, the softball field, not caring about the softball, but there was a bat that basically, the noise was coming from his mouth was just so sad because somebody broke his wings. And I chased the young kids away that were poking them with a stick, and I didn't know what to do. When you find a bat that obviously is in pain and a broken wing, can that be fixed by anybody?
So the question is that our are bats able to be rehabilitated like a broken wing type of a thing. So if you find
Yes,
one,
it's the same with birds. Yeah. Call your local rehabilitation center. They will definitely have a bat person, probably on hand, if not very close contact with. That was one of my future thoughts for when I get older is I would love to open a bat rehabilitation center in North Carolina. Big dreams, long dreams away, but definitely a nonprofit bat rehabilitation center because of, we find these issues and we have these issues and it's hard to send every single animal to one type of rehabilitation center. I know we have several around the state, but they always get overwhelmed. And it's hard to put species together that don't coexist anyway. But yes, definitely call your wildlife rehabilitator with that issue. They will be able to help you because there are a lot of procedures that go with capturing a bat.
and
especially in
Donna mentions that Carolina Wildlife Conservation Center in Iron Station in North Carolina does rehab bats, which is encouraging. Mary asks if you can mention the best time of year to install a bat box. She sees spring, but is that the best time or is there?
That is where my expertise fault because I have not done enough research into it. That's where I would reach out to the North Carolina Bat Working Group because they go around and they install these bat houses. They provide a lot of good information. They're experts in the bat field that have been working a lot longer than I have, especially with bat houses. So I cannot answer that question. And it can vary. I mean, it might say put them up in the spring, but you might not see bats for 2, 3, 4 years after that. It just depends. I mean, sometimes they just don't like it. So nothing that you have done wrong, but
And as any habitat, building it, the sooner the better. It's like planting a tree. Best time was 20 years ago. Second best time is today. So spring or fall, getting out and if they need it, they can find it. They happen to come across it and scout it and find it. Monica, I really appreciate your time and sharing your research and what you've done and giving us a little bit of insight on this. I know a lot of folks are going to find this on our YouTube channel in the future and get a chance to listen to it. We'll probably have a recording ready in just a few days. But in any case, thanks again for presenting and sky puppies is my favorite word of the night. So thank you for that.
you're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Happy holidays. Take care. Bye-bye.